You feel it before you see it, a heaviness in the chest. The air thins, everything slows, and then silence. You've just died. At least that's what the machines say. Your heart has stopped. The monitor draws a straight, unbroken line. In the eyes of medicine, you're gone. But what if you're not? For centuries, humans have feared death, not just for its finality, but for the void that follows. What happens in the moments after life ends? Do we vanish like a flame blown out, or is that just where the story begins? In recent years, scientists, doctors, and survivors of near-death experiences have started asking the same question, and what they found is unsettling. First, let's talk biology. Within the first 10 seconds of cardiac arrest, the brain loses access to oxygen. Neurons begin to shut down. Consciousness should fade. But studies show something strange. A spike in brain activity right after death. Not before, after. In 2013, researchers at the University of Michigan observed a surge of electrical signals in the brains of rats seconds after their hearts stopped. The pattern wasn't random. It resembled the kind of brainwaves we associate with heightened awareness. Focus, even clarity. A final burst of consciousness, or something else entirely. In humans, it's harder to measure. But countless patients who were resuscitated after clinical death report eerily similar experiences, floating above their bodies, hearing doctors speak, watching themselves from corners of the room. They describe tunnels, light, overwhelming peace, or in rarer cases, terrifying emptiness. Science calls it a hallucination, the brain firing its last synapses in a swirl of DMT and dying neurons. But how do you explain verifiable details? One man recalled the exact tools used during his resuscitation, tools he had never seen. Another woman described the color of a shoe on the hospital's rooftop, a place she had never been. Weeks later, someone checked. The shoe was there. And so we ask again, is this memory or is it something beyond? For a long time, the line between life and death was clear. Your heart stops, you're dead. But now we know that death isn't a moment, it's a process. Even after the heart stops, some brain cells remain active for minutes. In extremely cold conditions, the body can go even longer. There are cases where people were revived after 30 minutes. One woman, after 6 hours in ice, came back, alive, a walking contradiction. So what does it mean to be dead? In Tibetan culture, it is believed that the soul lingers for 49 days before rebirth. In ancient Egypt, the heart is weighed against a feather to determine one's fate in the afterlife. Some indigenous tribes speak of a mist, a moment when the soul must choose whether to move on or stay. But in every tradition, there is a common thread. Death is not instant. It's a passage, a door, a transition, and doors go both ways. If the consciousness doesn't vanish at the moment of death, then where does it go? Is it stored, transferred, reclaimed by something greater? Quantum physicists have long speculated that consciousness may not be produced by the brain, but merely accessed through it, like a radio picking up a signal. When the device breaks, the broadcast continues, somewhere. Some even propose that our awareness exists in a kind of field, a non-local phenomenon woven into the fabric of reality itself. If that's true, then the body's death might simply disconnect the signal, not destroy it. It's no longer a fringe idea. In recent years, prestigious medical centers have launched studies into postmortem consciousness. The AWARE study, led by Dr. Sam Parnia, collected hundreds of testimonies from cardiac arrest survivors. Roughly 10% described vivid experiences while unconscious. Some even remembered details from surgeries long after their brains had supposedly stopped working. How is that possible? Is death porous? Imagine this. You're in a dark room. Suddenly a door opens. You glimpse a hallway, strange, dimly lit, unfamiliar. But before you can step through, you're pulled back. The door slams shut. You wake up. That's what many survivors describe. And it leaves behind a haunting question. What would have happened if they hadn't come back? Would the hallway lead somewhere? Somewhere warm, filled with light and memory? Somewhere cold, silent, and eternal? Or something we can't even begin to comprehend? These experiences don't prove what lies beyond, but they do something else, something perhaps even more important. They challenge what we think we know about life. They make us ask, am I just this body? Just this heartbeat? Just this flicker of electrical patterns behind my eyes? Or am I something more? Because if even one of these stories is true, If even one mind continued after the brain went quiet, then death is not what we thought. It's not the end. It's a threshold. And what lies beyond it might be watching us right now. They say death is the great unknown, but perhaps it's not as unknown as we think. If consciousness persists after the body has gone cold, then the next question is inevitable. Where does it go? If your awareness survives, where does it find itself in those first silent moments? Some say it lingers, watching, listening, hovering near the body like fog over still water. Others speak of tunnels, lights, voices from beyond, calling softly or sometimes urgently. But are these images shaped by belief, or are they windows into something real? Ancient cultures believed the soul journeyed after death. The Greeks imagined the river Styx, crossed only by those who paid the ferryman. The Egyptians described trials, a weighing of the heart. For the Tibetans, a soul navigates the bardo, a liminal space between lives. Thousands of years apart, yet all of them agree, something continues. But maybe it's not a journey outward. Maybe it's inward, a return to something buried deep within us, something we've always known but forgotten. A child in India remembers the village he never visited. He names people, places, the way he died. A woman in Alaska speaks fluent Japanese in her sleep despite never learning it. These cases exist, documented, investigated, unresolved. Skeptics say memory is fragile, imagination powerful. That's true, but some memories arrive too fast, too specific, and with emotions too intense to be dismissed as fantasy. It raises a strange possibility. What if consciousness isn't linear? What if it loops, scatters, reconnects, like fragments of a dream, returning long after we've woken? Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist from the University of Virginia, spent decades interviewing children who claimed to remember past lives. Many had birthmarks in places matching wounds from their alleged former deaths. Stevenson compiled over 2,000 of these cases. He never claimed they proved reincarnation, but he called them strongly suggestive. That phrase lingers, because in science, we seek proof. But in life, sometimes suggestion is enough to make us wonder. Some researchers believe death might be less of a cutoff and more of a transition, a reboot. Consciousness, no longer tethered to flesh, may join a broader field, a sea of awareness we cannot yet detect. Quantum theories suggest particles communicate across vast distances instantly. Could consciousness do the same? Could memory, identity, self be a kind of quantum pattern? One that isn't destroyed, but dispersed? It would mean that death is less like extinguishing a flame and more like letting go of a balloon. And where it floats, we don't know. In recent years, artificial intelligence and brain mapping have allowed scientists to simulate aspects of human thought. But even with all this data, the essence of consciousness, what it feels like to be you, remains untouched, unmeasurable, perhaps unmeasurable forever. So we return to the question, what happens 10 minutes after you die? Maybe your mind quiets, maybe it waits, maybe it drifts into dreams, or maybe it's met by something vast, gentle, familiar. Maybe there's a warmth, a presence, a memory of a place you've never been but always known. Or perhaps death is not peaceful at all. Perhaps it's confusion, fear, disorientation, a sudden tearing from the body as if waking from a dream you didn't know you were in. What makes death so terrifying and so fascinating is that no one really knows. And yet, we all will. It's the one destination shared by every living thing, the one experience no one escapes. But perhaps it's not about escaping it. Perhaps it's about understanding that death is not a wall, but a mirror, one that shows us what we are and what we were never meant to see until the very end. What we do with that knowledge is up to us. Will it terrify us or set us free? Because if consciousness survives, even for a moment, then maybe, just maybe, we were never truly alone, even in death.